Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello and welcome back to the channel where today is one I've been looking forward to. We're back here at QuickSilver to collect my Ford GT now with its new QuickSilver Special Project exhaust system, which has been created for my car. Now we came out before because I've had a few different exhausts on this car to date, a permanent Shmee-mobile that I've now owned for about 4.5 years. We decided to create a bespoke system, a QuickSilver Special Project system, and Ollie is going to be joining us in a moment to show us a little bit more about some of the changes that they've made since we were here last time out. But of course today we're going to hear it for the first time. We're going to go out on the road with it to experience it under load for the first time as well. But you can already sneak a peek. We've got the diffuser off at the moment of some of the details inside with the new system fitted. We've got some of the original systems over to the side as well. But this is something I've been looking forward to. This car is going to sound better today than it ever has before here at QuickSilver. Now this process actually began a couple of months ago when we brought out one of the stock exhausts for the team to take a look at. A few weeks back, I then brought the car down so that we could effectively take some temperature sensor readings and also a listen with the stock system. Ollie's going to tell us more about this as well in a moment. But since then, they've done a test fit, they've adjusted some things, and one of those, come and take a look under here, we now have the Shmee 150 graphic and the QuickSilver logo on the coating of this exhaust system, made from Inconel, exceptionally lightweight, just under 5.5 kilos for the whole system back here. We still have cats, everything is of course legal and correct as it should be. Amazing to see the underside of the car, and then these very raw tips exposed out of the back that you just know shortly are going to sound the part. Now before we do get it started, Ollie's going to come and tell us a little bit more about this, and then it's going to be time to hear it.
Well, good to see you again. Welcome back.
It's good to be here. It's good to see this.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Well done, fitted on the car. And I'm here with the Boffins clipboard.
I was going to say, prepared.
Yeah.
Here's one we prepared earlier.
Yes,
so
exactly.
Talk us through this, because there's one very visual change, of course, which is super cool, because when you look through, obviously when the diffuser is in, you can see both the QuickSilver and the Shmee 150 logos there.
Correct. And we did that just as a little nod. So obviously when everything's on and your plate's on, you kind of have to look to see it. So like if anyone's kind of going, oh, is that Tim's car? And they peek through the back of the grills. Well, there's the confirmation.
If the plate and the unique colour scheme have
that's true.
No, so talk to me through this, because obviously we touched on the things you could check with the system prior to having the car here. But obviously having the car here means test fits, means learning more.
Correct, yeah. So obviously we did a baseline before on the stock exhaust, so we can see kind of what that's doing and then where we want to improve. A lot of what we did almost goes without saying. If you're doing a straight pipe on a car, it's going to be louder, it's going to generate less artificial restriction, but it's about validating the design and making sure everything's performing as it should, which I'm pleased to say it's passed. So I'll put it up in the air a little bit more if you like, and we can sort of go underneath and see everything that's going on. Right, so now it should be a little bit easier to see underneath. So yeah, Shmee 150, QuickSilver here. This is, as we discussed before, the hot aluminium look coating as a nod to the original Ford GT40, which would have had this sprayed on the exhaust. It keeps everything aesthetically quite pleasing. You know, you've got these aluminium hard lines, you know, oil coolers, you know, so just you've got consistent textures underneath, so that when it looks through the back of the car, it doesn't look sort of overtly aftermarket, I don't think, particularly when the diffuser's all back on. And then obviously the tips, we've gone for the rawer finish on, which we think is cool with the hand-rolled Inconel. So what that means is that when you drive the car, you know, Inconel darkens a bit, so you'll pick up some goldy tones, which you can already see actually forming inside as it gets hot, and it'll darken a little bit on the exterior. So the plan was that you would have a kind of, I'm making it sound a little bit like a kind of, you know, college art program, but actually we like the idea that you have almost a piece of art on the back of the car that kind of, the more you drive it, the more it kind of wears in with you. So it'll darken to a shade like the wheels, and I just think this will stay consistent. This will change a bit over time. I just think that's quite cool.
And golden touches on a car with golden stripes is also like spot on. So fit, that kind of thing, obviously hooks on to cats and stuff that are all stock. Those are the original factory OEM parts.
Yeah, and you've got no flex anywhere in this exhaust, so you've got to be super consistent with your jigging. And obviously we were talking back and forth as we were going through the process, but I remember sending you a picture without the V-band clamp on, going, look at the seal on that,
right
because
there.
that's your, you know, if there is no margin for error, what's 0.2 of a mil out there will throw it off up there or even more. So
the way these attach, it's kind of floating up through the back of the car.
Yep.
Obviously, normally, as with the stock systems over there, we have my US sports system and the European standard system. The box would be filling pretty much the entirety of this gap. We should probably dig into kind of some of the numbers and things.
Sure, yeah.
Talk temperatures, talk noise.
I like this bit. We're going to get nerdy. So, in short, we've already discussed the weight saving, but for anyone that didn't see the previous video, and shame on you, it's, the original exhaust is just a shade over 9 kilos, ours is 5.4. And then next up is decibels. So obviously, it shouldn't come as a surprise that when we remove silencing, the exhaust gets louder. But it's sort of by how much louder. So we've done a pre and post here. This is to MSA standard, so the same you would test it on a track day. So actually, what's interesting, I mean, they'll only test it up to 95 decibel or 4K, you know, two-thirds of max revs, you know, illustrated here. But actually, on a blip, it was blowing over 95 dB anyway, so comfortably over. So. You know, but we're not looking at a
consistent increase, quite a lot of increase, around 3K.
Very well spotted, which actually leads me on. That's a nice segue.
Okay.
We shall bypass the temperature thing quickly and head straight to this. Now this is taken from our previous video where you and I went out and we gave the car some stick.
Yeah.
So this is up to 5K represented as an in-gear frequency graph.
Okay.
So what you can see here is kind of what we discussed before. You've got some bass through the system. You've got some top end because it was titanium, so you get that inherently higher pitched resonant frequency. But what you are lacking is this mid-range punch, and you can see that
completely disappears.
Yeah, it's fairly consistent all the way through. The top end on the system was nice. You had a bit of bass. But sort of anywhere from 2.5K upwards, flatline, and actually weirdly so. But then you're losing so much of the car's tone in the box. Flip it over to here's one we did earlier, which is again is an in-gear pull with this exhaust on it. And this is the same attenuation setting, by the way, on both mics, exactly the same gain staging. So it's a like for like test. You know, what you can see here is where you don't particularly want frequency. So this is from 2K pull. Around here, 60 to 80 hertz. If you were seeing a spike there, I'd be a little bit worried because that's the drone zone on a 6-cylinder car. We're making from 100 hertz, which is actually, so in some ways, the lower end fundamentals are almost more manageable on this exhaust, and I'm sure that must be something to do with the way it bounces around inside the chambering on that other exhaust. But then look at it here, as we start to get up to 3,000 RPM upwards, look.
Sonorous.
All this mid-range tone back in. So the high end is almost the same as the factory exhaust, and going from a denser material from the original that was titanium, you would expect to see a slight roll off in top end. Actually, the top end is the same on both of them. But all this mid-range tone throughout the rev range. It's a much, as you'll hear actually in a second, it's a smoother, it's a more well-rounded note, but robust and with some top-end break-up and crack. It's in a minute I'll have to stop talking, start firing.
Do you know what I should also just say? I find it really interesting to see obviously what you're doing with all of this, because this is the process behind making a special projects exhaust, right?
Correct.
There's the whole learning about it, developing it, creating it. It's not just like you string together some pieces of metals or whatever it might be.
We're not a fast fit, you know, we're not sort of bend it up on the day, out goes your whatever it is. And then finally, actually the final part of the validation test, and I've actually put, one of them has fallen out as I've walked over here, but I've actually put some of our original temp strips in there. We repeated the test after you went because some of our strips weren't firing up on the day. But basically what we do is we take the car up and down the estate here, accelerate up to 30, brake, accelerate up to 40, brake, accelerate up to 50, which is about as much as we can do there, brake. That gets everything smoking hot with minimal airflow through the back of the car. I think part of the reason before we were looking at this bodywork, and you'd said, look, you can't PPF it going hot, right? So
we have the PPF lines here, because if you put PPF on this section, game over.
So we put temp strips on it, didn't we? Thinking, God, this thing's got to get roasting. Couldn't even get them to register. And I think it's because the airflow over the car is so efficient down these channels that it's cooling this section. So when you're sat still, that's when stuff's scorching. So we try to do, not that we want you to think you're torturing your poor car while you're not here, but actually, we tried to give it the least flattering test we could. Accelerate, brake, accelerate, brake, accelerate, brake, leave it standing, rev it, get everything smoking hot, and then see what it's doing. And look at these, that's your left and right tailpipe before, so you're somewhere there between 138 to 140 outside, on the outside.
Yep.
And then this is now, it's sat absolutely bang on 127. People often say, have you flow benched an exhaust? Well, we can do, but a flow bench is going to tell you what we already know, which is that straight piping an exhaust makes it run more efficiently. Exhaust gas temperatures and its ambient surrounding is really the measure of efficiency for us. So I'm pleased to say that it's passed every part of its validation. It's lighter, it's louder, it's got tone where we want it, it doesn't have it where we don't want it, and it's running cooler. Happy days.
Perfect. Exactly what we were after.
Okay, shall we take a listen?
I think it's time. I think it's time to hear this on, it will be a cold start, won't it?
Yeah, in fact, we might want to stand back a little bit more.
Oh, is it like that? Okay, let's do it. Cold start of the Ford GT. Oh, wow. Punchy. That's punchy. This car has a mega cold start anyway. It always has an amazing sound. Anybody can really hear us.
Hopefully these are doing a good job.
Time for a little baby blip. We'll get it outside in a moment when everything's warmed up a touch. Jump ahead, we've got the diffuser back on, plate is back on, last bolts to tighten up, but all looking as good as it should. Basically this whole under tray at the rear of the car just drops down, loads of bolts all the way around, not too complicated, and in a second, gonna get a view of what it actually looks like through the grills when this car is down at normal road height. This is actually a moment I'm really looking forward to see what this is like as the car lowers. That's so cool. As Ollie said, not something you're necessarily going to immediately notice, but if you know that's there, that's a really, really cool touch on this new QuickSilver exhaust system. So, diffuser in place, it'll be time to start it up again, pull it out, and go for a first little drive. This actually sounds epic. Hearing it now, even just moving while idling. Gonna hop in a second. Oh, this car is so cool. Can't believe it's 4.5 years old. I've had it for 4.5 years. It was launched 8 years ago. Oh, outside. That's throaty. That sounds amazing. Well, lots more of that to come in just a moment. It's time to go. You know what? Before I close the door though, quick little listen to this while it's warming up. Okay. That's about 4,000 RPM. Now, typical Ford GT problems, I left it here with not a whole lot of fuel. We're right down towards empty because this thing does not like to conserve very much petrol. But let us go for a little drive. In this car, there are no valve controls or anything like that, or changes between the different driving modes. So we're in sport at the moment. I'm not going to drop it down into track mode because on the road, that is utterly useless. It also, thankfully, has quite good ground clearance on some of these bumps, but we will head out, go to a little country lane where we drove before, where we can go and have a bit of fun with this thing, be reminded what it's all about, and let this exhaust sing as the car was built and intended to do. The roads open up, we've got some lovely twisty English countryside lanes to enjoy, and of course we now have this new system. And I tell you what, my first impressions in here are exactly as Ollie kind of led me to expect. In the mid-range, how much more of the mid-tone you hear. It's a very similar sound to before, but both I would say deeper and raspier, kind of all at the same time. If I lower the window slightly as well, where you get some of the turbo noises, although I imagine that would be quite hard for the camera to pick up. Just drop it down to second gear. Wow, That's where you hear the sound from it. It's not perhaps as crazy loud as you might think. It's not like massively volume, because of course we've still got cats. But what it is just a bit more of a punch, and that's what we've been after. It looks so cool in the back of the car, and it just gives me this extra sound, extra volume, extra pitch. And up at the top end like that is super cool. Also, in gear, you hear those pops when you get back on the throttle. In fact, that's quite interesting just to play with. Second gear, accelerate a little bit, lift off, and then back on throttle. And you get that pop noise out of it, which you always got, but it's significantly louder now. That has really come into its own. This is exactly what I always said about this car. The sound never really matched up to what the car should have been, certainly the stock systems. And this is now kind of the glory that the Ford GT should have. What a result, what a result. We're just about to be back at the national speed limit section, so drop it to first gear, open road. That is awesome. That is absolutely awesome. Downshift as well. It makes everything sound that little bit sharper as well in the shifts. Wow. Let me just close the windows again quickly. The thing with the system on this car is that it's actually quite a long way behind you. So we'll give some blips of it when we get back, obviously, with everything now being warm. Who said a V6 can't sound cool, hey? I know there was always so much talk about this car not having a V8, but they went for aero, they went to Le Mans, they won at Le Mans, that was what it was all about. And now we've got another lovely little custom detail spec on the Ford GT with that view out of the passenger mirror, looking underneath those floating buttresses, which are actually part of the cooling back in towards the engine bay. I'm learning the characters of it. Every time you have a new exhaust, you have to get used to where it sounds best, right? It's always different. At top end of the rev range, that just sounds glorious. Oh, what a car. Now made even better. The shifts, it's a new sound, because when I downshift, there's this extra like character from it. It's not quite as muted as that standard Euro system was before. Obviously, when I had the American system, which doesn't have the same regulations in terms of the baffles in the back box as the European exhaust, that would have been somewhere in the middle between the two. This isn't over the top. I was perhaps slightly fearful that we could end up going too far with it, but I would say that this result is basically the perfect middle mix for this kind of thing. I'm actually going to pull in here just for a second. Hopefully it's safe to do so, because this might be a good place to just park up for a moment and maybe have a cheeky little listen from the outside. Well, that sounded absolutely epic. I wasn't expecting those snaps from it. It always had that feeling at the top of the rev range, but the way that absolutely screamed, and the almost bang snap, I don't know how to describe it, at the very top of the rev range, was quite something. I'm not gonna lie, that was really cool. So back out we go, back into manual. This is the downside of a left-hand drive car, because I am totally blind to the road here. Are we clear? Yeah, we're looking clear. I think we are good to go. So, open road. Wow, this is good. This is what we needed. Bedding it in, hey? Bedding in the new exhaust on the GT. I'm so pleased also that it's dry today. Sorry to beat on about it. I'm British, it's what we do. We talk about the weather. It was raining earlier. It's been forecast to be absolutely miserable. Thankfully it's not. And thankfully we have these wonderful roads to enjoy today in the GT. One of the nice advantages about being out in the countryside is that we can find some lovely roads to drive and really enjoy what a car like this is for. And I tell you what, I am very aware that it's a lot louder outside than inside. But down here, just to go through the Revs, got the window open, but if I just close the window, less of the wind noise, more of just the exhaust sound. The only thing you're very acutely aware of somewhere like this is how wide a car like the Ford GT is down what's a fairly narrow lane. But I think this was one of the things, right, to give this car more life within speed limits. You know, this is at 40-50 miles per hour or so. 40 to 50, up to 60, and then back off. It's just, oh, that guy came in very fast there. What an awesome car. Now even more awesome thanks to this little addition of a QuickSilver exhaust. You can tell this car's been for a drive down country lanes with all of the mud that comes through the aero, obviously being thrown up from the tyres. But this is cool. That's also cool, but that's a side topic. This is absolutely mega. A little bit warm back here, but they look amazing. And that slight golden hue in the exhaust tips as well just links in with having the gold stripes, the Alan Man Racing livery that I did on this car. And obviously, if you look through the back, this is where you don't really notice it until you know that's there. And you see the QuickSilver graphics, and you see the Shmion 50 graphic over on this side, which is super, super nice. It's all about the details. You know, the details on this car have been pretty much there from the very beginning, from even choosing the paint colors, going to Alan Man Racing, where the late Alan Man's sons kindly allowed me to use the original Man Gold for the stripes on my car, which made it the first factory Ford GT with a bespoke stripe, full stop. Then obviously we've got the wheels, these BBS FIRs that they only made a few sets of for this car, painted in the Le Mans grey. The inside of the car has the red and gold stitching on the seats, which were done by the factory, Sparco, in Italy, and the steering wheel and the shift paddles by ADP, who are responsible for the interior, having those anodized gold paddles as well. It's a car that's about the details, and this is yet another special detail in my eyes about my Ford GT, which is a car that I will never say farewell to. Never ever. This is the last car that I would sell. It's literally, I don't know, it's a story. It's more than a car. It's more than a car. But it's a big thanks to Ollie and the team here at QuickSilver for their work on this to make everything happen, because that is a mega soundtrack, and that is going to be remaining tight on this car long into the future. If you're interested, do reach out to them as well, and I'm sure there'll be plenty more sound clips, sound bites and things with this to come in the not too distant future. That's it for now though. Thank you very much for watching, guys. We're going to head back to the Museum with the GT, and I'll see you again very soon. Cheers.